We are back here on the Greg Peterson Experience, and it is great to be joined by Stephanie Odie. Does a great job over there at the Big Ten Network. And Stephanie, great to have you aboard tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for letting me jump on, especially week one of college football. Cannot wait to get back into it.
I cannot wait as well, and I know that you're someone that is near and dear to the Ohio State University, so we're going to start right there. Ohio State finding them as a 17.5-point favorite against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, a little bit of a new look for them, a little bit of a new regime with Brian Kelly now out there at LSU. Relatively big line, but as we know, if you're going to be banking on one offense out there in the Big Ten, it certainly is Ohio State. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, it is the marquee game of the weekend, and I know that Notre Dame loses their head coach, but everyone is rallying behind Marcus Freeman. He had the bulletin board material. He was talking about that spread. I got it at minus 14.5 for Ohio State. It's stretched out to 17.5, and I know that total looks big, but I want to take the over. I feel so confident in this Buckeye team. They are so upset about that Oregon loss at home in the opener. That Buckeye team does not let those losses sit with them, just like we saw against Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl in 2019. They came back and they showed up to Clemson in the Sugar Bowl en route to a national championship. But this is going to be a statement game. I don't think just winning by 17.5 is enough for the Buckeyes. And when you have that trio of the Heisman contender and CJ Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Trevion Henderson, that is the most powerful offensive trio in college football. And then that defense, I know the secondary was that Achilles heel to the Ohio State Buckeyes in recent years, but they had that addition in Jim Knowles at defensive coordinator. And I think outside of head coaching positions, that was the most significant hire this entire offseason, and what he's doing to bolster that defense. I don't see anyone stopping this Buckeye team this year.
And I think it's going to be interesting to take a look at Notre Dame, not just in this game, but moving forward as well, because Marcus Freeman, as we know, he was by trade a little bit more of a defensive player, a guy that really made his bones by being able to bulk up that Notre Dame defense as well. So I do think that that's going to be interesting to take a look at. But I mean, in a Big Ten in which, as we both know, offense typically is at a premium. The one team that's really been able to bust through with their offense, that would be Ohio State. So I do think that that is going to be an interesting little bit of a parallel there. And when it comes to taking a look at week one as well, you mentioned that this is really one of the more marquee games of the week, but another marquee game is the Oregon versus Georgia game, as that one is going to be happening in the state of Georgia. And right now, we are seeing a similar line, 17.5 points in favor of Georgia right now. And this is one in which I feel like it's gone a little bit too far, because unlike with Ohio State, Georgia not a team that is necessarily going to go out there and is going to rip off a 45-plus point performance or anything like that. For Oregon, a little bit of a new look for them as well, but I do take a look at this Oregon team, and out of the two teams that we mentioned that are catching 17.5 points, I feel a little bit better about them.
Yeah, Ohio State's the only team with that wide of a margin that I'm taking to cover there. Here, I think Oregon is really stepping up at a time when Georgia's taking a loss. We see 15 of their starters move on. They even lose some guys in the transfer portal. And Oregon, they're looking to make a statement for the Pac-12, just like Utah is up in Florida against another SEC team in week one. But you look at the losses that Georgia suffers on that number one top-ranked defense from last year. I don't think the reigning champs are coming back as strong. And I think the X factor here, the biggest loss on the defense, is that the coordinator with Dan Lanning heading across the sidelines. He goes off to Oregon, and then in week one, he's right back in Georgia playing against his previous team. He spent 3 seasons there helping get this defense to the top-ranked defense in the country. So I think if anyone's suited to go up against them, it would be Lanning here. And I think that that's the X factor. Plus, he's also bolstered with a quarterback who's experienced in playing in the SEC against Georgia and Bo Nix. So I think that they're going to cover here, but I still have Georgia winning it.
Yep, I don't blame you there. I do think that Georgia winds up getting the job done. I just think that it's a case in which line has went a little bit too far. So I feel like we're in agreement on that one. And I'm not sure about you, but I think that we're in agreement that it's very weird to see Big Ten conference play wind up going off in very early September. I still remember from last year, being someone from the state of Wisconsin, I was pretty salty about that Penn State versus Wisconsin game. So good thing we don't wind up having the Badgers in action in one of those. But with that said, we do have Penn State in another one of those. As they wind up hitting the road, they're going to be going up against Purdue. And Purdue, I think we're between a 3 and 3.5 point underdog. We've seen a couple threes wind up resurfacing, but we've mostly went to 3.5 in this spot. Where do you wind up seeing this one playing out? Because it's certainly a game which I think that point's going to be at a little bit more of a premium here, as we've seen the total go from 56.5 down to right around 52 to 53. But I do take a look at this circumstance, and I think that's just very strange in general, trying to handicap conference games here in very early September.
Yeah, Purdue proved to be that team that could really derail your season, and they stepped up last season. So they're looking to do that again here, but even at home, I think Penn State is just a smidge above them here. And you even look at the series, they've dominated. The last time these teams met at Ross State Stadium, it was back in 2016. The Nittany Lions crushed the Boilermakers 62-24. That was the most points scored by a visiting team in that stadium's history since 1924. I think it's going to continue. Penn State's defense has allowed less than 200 passing yards per game last year and had 14 interceptions. Both of those marks were third best in the Big Ten. I know that their offense isn't as mighty, and that's why I do like the under here. But Penn State covering, a 2.5, I think that's going to be an easy one, even at Purdue. They got an experienced veteran, sixth-year quarterback in Sean Clifford. And, say what you want about him, but he had a solid year last year with, over 3,000 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, just 8 interceptions. He's got some weapons, and I think that they're going to be able to put this one to bed, but I like the under as well with this one.
Yep, I'm right there with you, and we have seen that total tick down quite a bit, but how about if we wind up giving some love to this conference, because I love the song, The Return of the Mac, and you know what? You've got a little bit of a play on a MAC team, as we've got Miami of Ohio going on the road, facing off against Kentucky. If this were a football matchup, we could probably see a little bit of a bigger line than right around 16 to 17 points. Right now, I'm seeing this settle in at a lot of places, right around a 16 to a 16.5. But with that said, take me through your mindset in terms of Miami of Ohio versus Kentucky, because this is one of those games that are off the beaten path. But as we both know, sometimes some of the best money is made on some of these games that aren't necessarily getting the love nationally.
Yeah, you're definitely right that maybe if this was a basketball game, it'd be much different. I went to Miami of Ohio, and I can safely say that Yager Stadium was not a frequent place for me to visit. I think we would take the short 2-hour drive to Columbus much more often for a football game than we would, make the walk to Yager. But I like Miami here to cover. I do think Kentucky is a little bit of a sleeper in the SEC just based off that schedule. Kentucky will win this one. 17.5, though, I think Miami can cover this. Just on Monday, the line moved so much when we learned that Chris Rodriguez Jr., their top running back suspended for an offseason DUI. We don't know how long that suspension will be just yet. I think that's a major loss. We saw that line movement just yesterday. We see them lining up for the podium. It was a 17-point favorite at 11:30. And then as the presser continues, that line dropped to 16, and even some books 17.5 to 16. So there's been lots of movement with that one announcement. Big impact player. I think it's going to definitely have repercussions for the Wildcats. You're also missing out on Jordan Wright, who is another big impact player. And so I think that these two big losses that Kentucky's having in that first game, I think it's going to be tough to overcome, even if it's a home game. I think Miami can surprise you. I think that Kentucky's going to be a contender for that SEC spot, but only because they have a weaker schedule. And going up against a Miami team, they might get surprised, just looking ahead at their conference.
And I do think pointing out the fact that Rodriguez is going to be out with that DUI, that is very important as well, because Kentucky, a team that very much is ground game based, and we got about 30 or so seconds here. Take me through Utah versus Florida, because I feel like this is the other marquee game of the week.
This is one that I the hardest one I struggled with was Cincinnati and Arkansas, so I'm almost glad we're not even getting into that one. I think the Pac-12 definitely has a lot to win here. I mean, you're going in as a ranked team in the Swamp, one of the toughest environments in college football. So both of these teams have a lot at stake. Florida boasts the longest running for home openers and going for, I think it was 32 games in a row in their home opener without a loss. I think they're going to get upset at a 2.5-point spread. I think the Utes will top that. They're the contender to make it and that fourth spot out of the Pac-12 in the college football playoff, but they've got to do well for the Pac-12. I think their conference name is riding on it.
I think so as well. Big thanks to Stephanie for joining me right here on the Greg Peterson Experience. Baseball's coming up next.